AWS Made Easier. This is the show where we talk about AWS announcements, especially with an eye towards FinOps, towards cost optimization, towards AI. My name's Stephen Barr.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rahul Subramaniam, and we are continuing the series talking about all the amazing AWS services that are going to be at show at reInvent, which is now only about how many days away? Today is the 26th, yeah, 10 days. No, less than that.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
coming up.
it's, it's less than a week at this point. Uh,
Oh, that's right. We will be there. In a week's
exactly.
time,
We're
we
going
will
to be
be there.
there. Yeah, I fly out of here on Sunday and be there on Sunday. The beauty of the earth moving or rotating and doing international travel going west, sorry, is much easier. So I start on a Sunday and reach there, even though it's almost 26 hours of travel. But that'll be amazing. I can't wait to see everyone there. What are we talking about today, Steven?
Well, today we are going to be talking about storage. Now, storage is a huge topic with AWS, and it's funny. It's another one of these very simple, and yet I was thinking about our Cloud Fix Finder fixers, right? So we want to help people save money, and I was looking at the ones that are the ones that we talk about as the top three in terms of bang for your buck, and they're actually storage. So S3 intelligent tiering, that's an easy one. Turn on S3 intelligent tiering, and that's for those of you who don't know, that allows AWS to monitor your objects within S3 and move them to the different storage classes. So whether there's infrequent access or Glacier instant access or standard, it can shuffle those around. It's effectively a sophisticated lifecycle policy. So turning on S3 intelligent tiering, that's a good one. Then EBS, porting those GP2 volumes to GP3, that's another big one. And then also getting rid of idle EFS volumes. That's some of our easiest finder fixers, and they're all storage. So storage is important as a cost driver. So I thought we'll do what's new in storage. Again, it's one of the drier subjects, so this isn't going to be. It'll look different than the Gen AI track. I think you'll probably not have a lot of contention for getting into the storage sessions. I think there'll probably be a few empty seats, but that doesn't mean it's any less important. So I thought first we'll go over some of the what's new announcements in the storage topic, and then we'll get into predictions for what could be announced during the storage at reInvent, and see, okay, how is that going to relate to, of course, AI. So let me share my screen and let's jump into it. Okay, so here is the what's new AWS what's new page, and we filtered for storage. See, there's a lot of interesting announcements to S3. Let's see,
Yeah.
S3 now supports enforcement of conditional write for general purpose buckets, new functionality to conditional writes. There is mount point for S3. Now remember when mount point
Yeah.
came out, we were a bit perplexed. We actually had Jeff on the show, Jeff Barr, and he explained the use cases for mount point. So there's a few different things. Let's jump into and this one's a good one. S3 now supports 1 million buckets per account.
Yep.
So we're going to figure out why. Is that a good idea or not? So let's
Yeah.
jump into some of
Let's
the
start from the
particular
beginning.
announcements.
Yeah. Sounds good.
All right. Let's do the new functionality for conditional writes. Okay,
Great.
let's try and parse through this one together. This one is, I think, one of the more technical for a what's new announcement. It goes into some detail. So let's just kind of read through this together and figure out the value of this. So this is S3 can now perform conditional writes that evaluate if an object is unmodified before updating it.
Yep.
Okay, so let's see. You use this capability by providing the E tag of an object using S3 put object or complete multi-part upload API requests in both S3 general purpose and directory buckets. So is the E tag like a hash? Is it saying check the hash value of this object? So if you're uploading like a video file, you didn't want to just re-upload it.
Correct. So it is the hash of the object that is being stored in S3, and that is what makes it really neat. So when you do a S3 put object, you're basically giving it a key, and you're saying at this particular with this key, go ahead and upload this object. Now, apart from the key, you also have the e tag, which is the hash, and it's almost like an absurd to say that if an object already exists with that e tag, don't go ahead and create a new one, or don't just go ahead and with the upload operations. That could potentially save you a lot of time and effort. Now, in a lot of scenarios, you have situations where you're basically uploading a whole lot of files without really trying to figure out whether it already exists or not. And sometimes these are big files. Like, there are a lot of people who are doing video editing, and they might have multiple copies of a particular file in different places. I can give you a personal example of my entire photos library. I'm so paranoid about it. It's our entire family's, collection of all the photographs. I have multiple redundancies for it. Now, if by mistake, just because the name of the file was the same, if I was overwriting a file, I would be prevented from doing that for a simple reason that the e tags would not, sorry, I would be prevented from creating a new or just overwriting the same thing over and over again, because it would recognize that that file already exists and I don't need to create another duplicate or overwrite that particular value.
When I don't understand something, I'm in the habit of checking with Perplexity, for example, looking at what is the difference between an S3 E tag and a standard hash. Interestingly, the file size typically less than 16 megabyte
Right.
for standard upload E tags. And we're talking about, and I've been in this very situation, multiple gigabyte video files. Computing an MD5 takes a long time.
Correct.
So, good thing that they have, MD5 hash of concatenated part hashes, followed by a dash and the number of the parts. Okay,
Correct.
I see that.
So the final value will not be an MD5 itself.
No.
However, it's made of parts, which are MD5s.
Okay. So that makes sense. That's really good to understand. Okay, so what is the benefit of this conditional write?
So number one, if you're writing very massive files, I guess you could save a ton of money because you're just not going to overwrite a file over and over again. That does make a difference depending on your use case. In other situations, you might want to make sure that you are, I guess you're going to overwrite a file only if the e tags are different. So I think this makes it very efficient to basically load up a whole lot of information, keep your backups on S3 going consistently.
Well, and interestingly here, it says this new conditional header can help improve the efficiency of your large-scale analytics, ML, and parallel workloads by reliably offloading, compare, and swap operations to S3. So in a sense, S3 is being used as a compute in terms of computing these hashes and making sure that you have these.
One interesting use case for this, for example, is there's a particular scheme in which it's very efficient to hold all your logs and streaming data that's constantly coming in into S3, right? So that anytime you're bringing in new updated data, say at the end of every day, you're processing all the unprocessed logs or analysis that's being streamed in. What you can do is you can use the hashes. Number one, you can use the hashes to make sure that you're only writing new data onto S3 and not any of the older stuff. And the second thing that it allows you to do is you can then very efficiently just read and write those specific objects that are absolutely new. You don't have to worry about literally reloading and reprocessing all the old data.
Got it. Understood. Well, how do we rate this one? 1 cloud to 5 for the new viewers. We rate every article on a 1 cloud to 5 and then give it a tag of simplifies, neutral, or adds complexity. What do we think about this one?
So I'd say that I'd mark this as a 4 on 4 clouds in terms of an announcement. I would have loved to see a few more use cases, well defined, saying if you have this scenario, this is what you should do, and here's how you can leverage this. It's not as crisp of a definition about what scenarios you would actually. They say that it makes these things more efficient, but how or why? What's that scenario that where you would leverage this? So those are things that I wish that they'd added to this. Um, I would I would assume that this simplifies again, or I'd keep it as neutral, and we'll see how folks are using this. Right now, it's too new to say that this has a huge impact on making life simpler. Remember that you have to do a little bit of additional work. There is now e-tags to kind of look at. You have to set the rules, you set the conditions, and only if those hold true will it write. So I think I'll have to wait and see how much of an impact this has.
And I imagine that people who need this feature may have already written some type of workaround for it.
Yeah.
Some
For
local
them, I'd say this definitely
mapping.
simplifies. I would say for
Yeah.
them, it simplifies because you don't want to ever manage code that does all of this stuff at your end. So if it can be replaced and replaced with this feature, totally makes sense.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, let's go. 4 clouds to simplify. Sticking on S3 for one more article here. S3 now supports 1 million buckets per account.
Yes.
So the default used to be 100 buckets. Now it's 10,000 per account.
Yeah.
And you can request up to 1 million.
Correct.
Who would you do this? Or what's the design pattern? So it says customers can create new buckets for individual data sets that they store in S3.
Yep. So
Okay.
there are lots of use cases for this. So think of it this way. It is relatively easy to set permission schemes on a per bucket level, right? You can assign a bucket to a user, you can make it unique, you can literally firewall access to that to just one particular user. And that's a really good practice. So if I could have, if I had 1,000 customers or if I had 1,000 users, I could literally create one bucket per user and use that as the store for everything associated with them, which is really neat. It's really awesome that you can actually do that. Till not so long ago, the 100 bucket quota used to be a really big limitation to be able to do anything like this. And so you had to resort to a fact that you would create one bucket. Within the bucket, you would create folders on a per user basis, and then have to manage all the access patterns and the access schemes all by yourself. So this significantly simplifies the entire access control, permission schemes, all of that stuff for your customers and their customers' data by segregating them on a per bucket basis.
Yeah, and then you let Amazon worry about bucket boundaries, and that's obviously as set in stone as any code could be.
Exactly. So doing this on a per bucket basis makes life really easy for application developers. So I would definitely give this a huge simplifies, and I would give this a 4.5 cloud.
4.5. All right, 4.5. All right, 4.5 clouds for S3 million buckets.
Yes.
Let's take a quick break. I'm going to grab a drink of water, and then we'll come back. We're going to talk about predictions for reInvent 2024 storage. We'll be right back.
Some tools just find AWS cost savings and make you do all the work. Visualizing cost opportunities is great, but that's not enough. CloudFix, on the other hand, actually delivers those savings for you. And you don't need to worry, because CloudFix uses AWS recommended savings techniques. It fixes, not just finds. It's the easiest way to save money on AWS. It's 100% automatic and risk-free. And the best part of all, it works non-stop. Stop overspending on AWS and click on the link to start saving now.
Okay, we are back. Hopefully I can speak a bit more clearly. Let's look at the storage track for reInvent 2024. So looking at the topic page, it says best practices for S3, S3 Glacier, EBS, EFS, FSX, the Snow family, data sync, transfer family, storage gateway. Now let's look at the sessions and just kind of browse through them to see. Well, first of all, what do you think the predictions are before we look at the actual sessions? Rahul, what are your predictions for the storage track? What do you think is going to happen? And
Okay,
how is
so
AI related to it?
Okay, so two things that I think have been a theme for the last year is that number one, S3 has got a lot more security and all of that, those features around its capabilities. But the one that stands out for me is EFS. EFS has seen huge performance improvements. And remember that EFS has always been looked at as the NFS replacement. So what you had on-prem as NFS, EFS has always been looked at as that NFS replacement. And you'd be surprised as to how many different solutions rely on this common NFS like storage. And so EFS has seen huge leaps and bounds in performance. I still remember a time when your greatest nightmare on EFS would be if somebody triggered an unzip of a bunch of files that were zipped together. The performance on that would be so horrible that you could barely even use it. But now that you look at the performance improvement that have come into EFS over the last year or so, they've been absolutely phenomenal. It operates on par with the best in class NFSs that you find in on-premise setups. So I'd say EFS has been one huge area of improvement. The other ones, of course, EBS and stuff, they've been newer generations. My prediction going forward is that there's going to be a bunch of new storage specifically designed for AI. So when I say that, I mean you're going to see some stuff around memory, and you're going to see some more stuff around the vector databases. Because the demand for these two types of storage is really, really huge. The rest of it kind of relatively works well with S3 and EBS and EFS, but particularly vector storage and memory, which is designed for AI. I predict that there are going to be some new, interesting, and exciting announcements in those areas.
So we think about data stores where they can keep things in memory, but then be accessed in parallel, modified in parallel to support the memory of an LLM. So either a RAG
Correct.
system or some other vector data, in-memory vector database, in-memory graph database, something like that.
Correct. I mean, imagine that today your knowledge bases and your agents can take a limited amount of context. They have access to a limited amount of data that you're giving it. But imagine if that could be nearly infinite. It's like what S3 did for storage back in the early 2000s. I feel like there's a need for very large scale storage like that, which is vectorized, which is efficient for AI to deal with in terms of quickly identifying what context is relevant. So my guess is some sort of a combination between the DynamoDB, quickness of data return, and vector databases, some hybrid of those two things.
All right. Well, we will find out and reconcile these predictions at the end of the year. So let's have a look and see what happened. Okay, well, let's put on the screen the sessions. Let's do that here. And then I'll share that tab. Here we go.
Yep.
154 sessions. A lot of these are repeats. And looking at it, it is effectively talking about features that are already there.
Yeah.
And how to use them.
So again, if you're new to, so here's my advice specifically on storage. A lot of these make sense when you're relatively new to AWS. And please remember that reInvent is a conference for everyone in the community. It doesn't matter whether you're a newbie or you've been on the platform for the entire existence of AWS. It doesn't really matter. This conference is for everybody. So you have a chance, particularly if you're a newbie, to come in and look at all the patterns that have worked for other organizations, that the best practices that have been laid out, the cost savings and efficiency insights that a lot of the providers have. This is something that you might want to attend if you're absolutely a newbie. Storage is one of those foundational services. So you kind of need to have a good grasp of it if you want to make the best of AWS. So these will probably be very useful for those scenarios. And anyone who's trying to build out a massive data lake or trying to figure out how to scale their data to very large numbers, this might be an interesting exercise in learning from others.
No, I love what you said about how you want to learn from other people. It's easy to get in your own head and think, okay, we're the only people who are using AWS in this particular special way. Guaranteed you're not. Get into that room with other people,
100%.
talk about it, share ideas. I think that's great.
Yeah, I mean, honestly speaking, even after 16 years or 17 years of doing this, every single day I come across some new capability, some new feature that someone has tried out and has posted about it, and I have my mind blown about. Oh, that's a really interesting pattern. I had never thought about it and never heard about it. So it doesn't matter if you're a newbie or you've been here, for a really long time. There is still so much to learn, and I'm amazed at how creative people are as they use these services and come up with new insights and new ways of using these services that you would never have thought about before.
Definitely. All right. Well, I think we got to end this episode. I must have breathed in some weird air or something. I'm really struggling at the moment. So I think we got to end this episode. Going to recover for reInvent. I hope that you all have a really great time. We will be posting more updates throughout the week, more reInvent tips, tricks, great ideas. And if you want to see us there, please reach out to us. I will put the link to our Meet Us page in the show notes. Thanks for watching. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.